on the room.
Okay.
On the room. Okay, so
Good afternoon. Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Welcome to the Ppjpi webinar series on the promotion of international publications in impact factor ISI index journals that is sponsored by Universitas Airlangga, Surabaya, Indonesia. As we know, education institutes are trying to achieve the status as the best higher education institute. However, University of Airlangga is one of the leading institute which is pursuing its mission to become the world-class higher education. The aim of higher education in general is to produce qualified scholars that can contribute to the nation by providing the best quality research, teaching, and services. And it is always hard for the young researchers to publish their work in international reputable journals. Therefore, today a session is organized to build the capacity of Unair scholars, researchers, students, lecturers to publish their journals papers into international top-tier journals. In this occasion, we shall have outstanding discussion from our prominent speakers, whom I believe shall enrich our insight and knowledge regarding the theme of today, this webinar. Before the webinar begin, let me introduce the speakers today. For today's session, we have today prominent speakers from Australia, Professor Panizza. Welcome to the session, Prof. Let me a little bit share about the profile of Professor Panizza. She is Associate Dean of Art and Humanities at Edith, Cowan University, Australia. She is also the coordinator of Media and Culture Studies. Professor Panizza undertaken a number of prominent leadership roles, such as Associate Dean, Program Director, and Associate Head of the School and Coordinator of Master Professional Communication Programs. And most interesting thing that I want to share with you today's session, she's also a chief editor of an internationally recognized journal, Continuum, the Journal of Media and Cultural Studies. That is indexed by Scopus, and that is accredited as a Q1 and published by Taylor and Francis Routledge. And she's serving in this journal over 15 years. So I welcome you, Prof, to this session. I hope we can have a very wonderful discussion with you. And beside that, we have another prominent speaker, Dr. Irfan Wahyudi. And Dr. Irfan is one of my best friends. And welcome to this webinar, Dr. Irfan. And he's a lecturer at Media Studies, Faculty of Social and Political Science, Universitas Airlangga. Dr. Irfan has contributed to many journals, including the Continuum journals, and he's also working as a guest editor in many local and international recognized journals. His major expertise are social media and politics, social media and media culture. And Irfan was also a fellow of Edith Cowan University in 2019, where he's being a thesis examiner to the Curtin University as well. And I welcome you, Dr. Irfan, to this session. I hope so today's session will be very wonderful. And before going to next, I also want to share by myself. My name is Muhammad Saud, and I am a young researcher in Faculty of Social and Political Science. Basically, my major expertise are youth and social media. And I am also teaching and doing my doctoral study from Universitas Airlangga. Without further delay, I would like to welcome our first speaker, Associate Professor Panizza, to start this session. During this session, if anybody have any question, please write in the chat box. Prof, floor is yours now.
All right, thank you. It's a pleasure to be with you today, and I'm very pleased to discuss my experience as a chief editor of Continuum, which is one of the leading media and cultural studies international journals. I've been the chief editor for over 15 years, and I've been part of the journal for nearly 20 years now. So it's been quite a long time. So today I'll be talking about my experiences in the journal, and I'll be covering some key points. So a little bit of background first about the journal.
Okay.
So the title of my talk is Preparing Competitive Articles for Top-Tier Journal Publication. So just bear with me. Just go down and next slide. Okay. So this is the journal. This is the cover of the journal, Journal of Media and Cultural Studies. It's been going since 1985, so it has a very long history. And a tip when you're publishing in journals is to look at their longevity. How long have they been publishing for? So I'll go into a bit more detail later on, but as a tip, you look for journals that are well established. So
thank you.
Okay. So I'm just going to go back and I'll just kind of tell you a little bit about the journal. And we publish, we have full text downloads. So it is an international journal. We get authors from around the world, but we also get downloads from around the world. So from Eastern Europe, Africa, South Asia, Southern Europe, North America, and so forth. So I'm just going to go back. So today I'll be looking at what makes a good paper, and what are the most common mistakes made by writers? And the next point will be, what do editors look for when considering articles? And finally, what are the most common mistakes made by writers? So the three key points I'll be covering today in this presentation. So firstly,
So, Panizza, are you presenting on your PowerPoint? It's not.
Can you see any of the PowerPoints? Or okay, I'm just going to go through and we'll just try to work this out. Okay. Okay, so I'm just going to go. Can you see something now? Or?
No. Actually, there is nothing on the slide.
Okay, let me just try. Okay, sorry about this. We did a test run, but okay. Okay, just bear with me. Okay.
Yeah, it's right.
Is it coming up in the big screen?
Yes, Prof, it's fine now.
Okay, so let's just go back. And I'm just going to go back. So here I am. So we'll do a quick overview. There I am, Continuum Journal of Media and Cultural Studies, and the title of the journal that the presentation today, Preparing Competitive Articles for Top-Tier Journal Publication. So the full text downloads, as I've mentioned, we're an international journal. We have around 120,000 downloads per year. So in terms of the scope of the journal, that's our readership. Not just our readership, but our downloads, 120,000 downloads internationally per year. The cover of the journal, and as I've mentioned, we've been publishing since 1985, so there's been a really long history with the journal. And when you're looking at publishing, consider how long the journal has been published for, so their longevity. Generally, the longer they've been established, the more credible they are. So today, three key points. What makes a good paper, and what are the most common mistakes made by writers? Secondly, what do editors look for when considering articles? And finally, what are the most common mistakes made by writers? So they're the three key points we'll be looking at in today's presentation. So to start, know the journal. So a little bit of research on the journal. So understand when you have an article to publish, or you're looking for a publisher, see what's in your field. So that's where a little bit of background research. And one way of finding a suitable journal is have a look at the references for your article. So when you've used references, check where the article where you're citing from, where have they published? So publish either in one of the journals that they've published in, one of the authors that you're citing where they have published, and that will help you find the journal. So in that similar field. So know the journal. So do your background research, find out what journals are in the area. And one way of finding out those suitable journals is looking at your authors, which you have used and cited in your research paper, see where they have published and publish in that journal or in that journal field. So that's a tip when you're looking for journals to publish in. So do your research on the article requirements. So the readership audience. So if you're publishing in communications, for example, look for a communications journal. I know in some areas communications is very broad and there are various aspects. So think about, is your article qualitative research? So is it discussing the key points, or is it quantitative? Is it more about data? So you need to find a journal that publishes in that area. So having just the communications title in the journal, you also need to look at the kinds of articles they publish. So doing your background research. So do they publish qualitative or quantitative articles? What type of audience do they look for? For example, in communications, your work could be about education, pedagogy, the way communications is taught. So you might be looking at a communications education journal, or your article could be on Southeast Asian media. If that's the case, look for a Southeast Asian media communications journal. So try to focus in. There are many journals that have a broad base. So you could be looking at a general communications article, but see if you can find similar articles to your topic that has been published. So similar articles to your topic that has been published in that journal. So it could be something that you have referenced in your article. So have a look at how you've developed your article, what sources that you have used, where the authors have published, and publish in a similar or the same journals, or try to approach them to submit your article. So as I said, look at the theme, content, focus of the journal, and you'll find that on the websites for the journal, and find similar articles to yours. So you could be expanding on another article that they've published, and that will build the research in that field. So look at the website, look at the journal. You could contact the editors. So occasionally it might be useful to just send your abstract directly to the editor. As a guide, as an editor, I may get hundreds, sometimes it's hundreds of emails. It really depends if it's topical. So be prepared that you may not get a response. But one way of working out if your article is suitable for the journal is looking at the website. So the website will give you an understanding of the scope of the journal, what they cover. Look for similar articles that have been published in that field in your area, and look at the editorial list, because it's also a way of checking to see if your article, if the article that you're going to publish is in a journal that is of quality. So I'll go into that in a little bit more later. So, okay, to the next slide. So the abstract. So that's really important when you're publishing, is to have a very clear abstract. We get, as a journal, roughly 500, 600 abstracts per year. That is a lot to read. So editors, especially the top tier journal editors, receive many abstracts and articles. So you need to make sure that your abstract attracts their attention. So in approximately 100 or 250 words, you will need to summarize your findings and what the implications of those findings are. So what is your key point? And what have you found out? And so think about something that's original in your article, in your research. What makes it distinctive? So get to that point very early on when you describe in your abstract. So the abstract also must be an accurate reflection of what's in the article, because occasionally we get abstracts and you think this is a really interesting article and it gets submitted for review, but then the article is quite different from what the abstract is. So make sure there is a match. With abstracts, don't include footnotes or references. So it should be clear sentences, straight to the point, what makes your work distinctive, and what are the findings. So it does take quite skill in writing an abstract, and I always recommend is get someone else to read it, and so get a fresh perspective, fresh ideas, someone to look at it, one of your colleagues, and get them to read it, to proof it, that it's grammatically correct, and get their comments, their feedback. So that's just in the abstract, but I also recommend that for the article. So the peer support really helps. So the abstract, it must make sense. So sometimes when you're very close to your work, it's really important to get fresh eyes to read it. So the title is also very important. Make sure the title is concise, accurate, and informative. So titles are also often used by search engines. So it needs to be specific. So if your work does get published, you'll get a wider readership because they'll be able to find it in Google or whatever search engine they're looking at. And it must reflect the content. So keep the titles short and clear, and sometimes use keywords. If your article is about social media or digital media, put that in your title, because that's a broad term, but it will bring in more readers. So use keywords in there. And also, again, just reinforcing when you're looking for journals, make sure that you know the journal scope. So that's what the journal will be aiming at and the kind of articles they're looking for. So some of the most downloaded articles for Continuum. So one is by Jared Goggin, and some of you may be familiar with his work, and his article, Adapting the Mobile Phone, the iPhone and its Consumption. So you can see with this title, it's really clear. And the mobile phone, if anyone is looking for any research on the mobile phone or iPhone, they will come up with that article. So again, using those keywords in the title of the article. Another article that has thousands of downloads is Girl Power and Selfie Humanitarianism. See, it's a very simple title, but anyone looking at selfies, humanitarianism, girl or feminism, they would come up with that, or even just girl. So the three key, using keywords and putting that into your article. It also helps with, as an editor, when I'm looking at submissions, that I will go straight to the article title and I think that's interesting. It's straight to the point, and then I'll want to read more. So in your article, there should be an awareness of the literature. So the literature, you need to, when you're reviewing your article, when you're writing your article, you should use current literature, because sometimes I'll get an article and I think that it sounds interesting, but then I look at the citations and they're from the 1990s or 1980s, and that's okay. That's all right. Sometimes you're using seminal work from key authors, but you also need to make sure it's more current, like that you're up to date with the current literature. So that is a key point in writing an article. Make sure your literature review is current. So it is okay to use seminal literature by key authors, but see also what's up to date, the latest literature in that field. And one way, as I've highlighted earlier, when you have done your background research on the article on the journal you want to publish in, see if they've published similar articles and use those articles in your citations, so that you've acknowledged something about that journal and what they've published, so you're up to date with the latest publications. And it's very likely when or if your article goes to review, it will be sent to one of these authors that you have cited. So make sure that you're aware of literature that has been published in that journal that you're aiming for. So the literature, it needs to demonstrate that the literature has been considered in terms of its relevance, that it's up to date, and it engages with the material, so that there's discussion there, how you've used the literature. So where to start writing? And one way, if you have a master's or PhD, is your dissertation. So have a look at your thesis, and it could be a chapter from your thesis that could be rewritten to be published as a journal article. Generally, once you have found a suitable journal, it will tell you the maximum word count, and they kind of vary from 4,500 words to 8,000 words. So roughly it would be a rewrite of your chapter. Before you send it out to a journal, present it to your colleagues or your peers. In other words, get someone else to read it that you trust. And that will help refine it. And all academics do that. I have professors that I know very well that share their work with other academics. So it's all levels of academic status that do this, is get someone else to read the work to give a fresh look at how, if the article makes sense, proofreading it, and engaging, and that the article is engaging. So with your article, and I've got here a content checklist. So it's important that you look at that your article is well sequenced, that it's analytical, theoretical, stylistic. So it's in the style of the journal that you're aiming for, and that it hasn't been published elsewhere. And there are rules in terms of journal publication that you can't reproduce. I think it's more than 70% of something that's been published elsewhere. So have a check with the journal. Generally, you can't publish it in more than one source. So you can't republish an article. So it has to be, a minimum. It has to be a rewrite of if you are publishing something. So, so make sure it's original. Do a Google search also. And I always think Google searches are very good to search the internet, to have a look at if there are similar articles published. Also with titles, is there a similar article that has the same title? So, ensure the originality. And the key point that I would emphasize is proofreading. That's really important with international journals, in international English-speaking journals, is to have it proofread. And this is where peers will help. There are also journals, for example, Continuum is published with Taylor and Francis. And Taylor and Francis, if you go to the Taylor and Francis website, there's a tips and advice for journal authors. And there's also a proofreading resource there that you can click on a link and you can get your work proofread. So that is one source where the journal will help authors, and this is prior to submission. So before you submit it, you can go to, for example, the Taylor and Francis website and have a look for advice for authors and proofreading, and they'll provide, you do need to pay for it, but at least you'll have your article proofread and Englished. And I encourage this for all authors, and even myself, I always get someone else to read it and check for the grammar, because it's, when you are writing an article, sometimes you're very close to the theory and the ideas, but having it grammatically correct, making sure the spelling is there, that it makes sense. Having someone else read it will help pick out the flaws. So there are services, professional services out there that it might be worth seeking to get assistance to get your article published. So as a editor, the key things that I look for is, does the introduction state the contribution the article is making? So in other words, does it state what it's going to do? How is this article different from other articles? What is its value? So what is the value of the article? What makes this different or original? And does the article appeal to the readership? So if you're publishing for communications or political sciences, does it appeal to those readers? And as I said, doing the background research in the type of journal that you're publishing will help it understand the readership. Thirdly, does the article justify the findings? And, you know, is this important? Who is this article important for? And does it present new information? And that's probably the key point. There are many articles out there, and you need to consider what kind of original information, what is the new information presented in your research? How is it presented from a different perspective? And it could be the data that you introduce, or it could be the ideas that you present. So what's new? How is it original? You need to ensure that the conclusions restate and reinforce what is being said. So again, those key points, that have you reinforced what the key points of the article are? Is there a solid conclusion that reinforces the key points? And this is more about stylistic approaches to your article. So do you bring out your voice? Because there are some journal articles where you can say, use it from the pronoun, you know, that I have researched or we have researched this. You know, is your voice coming through? So look at the style of the journal. Are there articles that present from first person, or is it third person, the author suggests? In many cultural studies journals, for example, it's quite common to use I or we. In more political science journals, you may use the author. So you need to look at the kind of journal and the style that is used. You need to obtain the reader's attention, and this is when you're writing, putting the key points, presenting it in a clear hand. So I'll get to questions in a little while, so thank you. So bring new or fresh insights. So what are your fresh insights? What's new in your article? And using the appropriate voice. And the voice is determined by, in the style of the article, but the style of the journal. So when you're looking for quality journals, so do your research. So Scopus articles are valuable to universities because of the standing. So they're acknowledged, or you will get recognition by a university by publishing in a Scopus journal. But not all journals are equal. So ideally Q1, but if you're looking at Q3 to begin with, consider how long has the journal been publishing for, so how many years. Who publishes it? So there are key publishers such as Taylor and Francis, Sage Publications. So have a look at who the publisher is. Check the editorial board. So have a look at who's on the editorial board. Are there key authors that you're familiar with, key academics in your field? And check who has published with it, with the journal. So, the key academics in your field, have they published with that journal? And that will give the journal credibility. And be skeptical about online journals. And I'm just going to go to the next slide. So you're looking for established journals, and there are some journals that might only be 2 years old, but it's published by a major publisher. Have a look at the editorial board and look at the kind of articles and who has published in that journal. So there's nothing wrong with publishing in a journal that's new, but just do your background research in terms of credibility of the journal. Now, there are some journals, and the key publishers such as Sage and Taylor Francis do provide online journals as well. But there are many online journals, and you need to be aware of fake journals. And how do you know a fake journal? And some of you may get emails, and I get these emails too, thanking me if they've seen something that I've published, or they've seen a conference abstract, and they will thank me saying that my conference abstract is very interesting and that they would like me to publish in their journal. So they often use flattery. So they'll say something nice about you or your work to get you interested. Often these are phishing tools. They're there to get your interest. And one way of picking it out, sometimes it's not, the English is not correct or the grammar is not correct. So, and there are many predatory publishers, so they're usually not credible. They will ask for a fee to publish your work. They won't have the proper proofing of your work, and that's really important. So the proofing and editing of your work and reviewing. All the Scopus journals, or most Scopus journals, will have a double-blind peer review. Double-blind peer review means that it will go to two academic reviewers that will review your work and give you feedback. Often the fake journals won't be reviewed, or you'll get a very simple response. So they're not engaging with your work. Often the fake journals, as I said, will ask for a fee, and it's really their way of making money. So the academic credibility isn't there. And it is hard to find and discern what's a fake journal or what's a real journal. So some of them have titles that look very important and significant. So do your background research. Look at who the editorial board is. Who's on the editorial board? What universities? Are they academics in your field? Well-known names. Look at how long it's been published for. And probably one of the key points is looking at who has published with that journal. Is it key academics? So that will help with ascertaining on working out if the journal is credible. And here's a kind of a short article on scientists outwit predatory publishers by tricking them into appointing a fake editor. And I get this too, where they'll say, oh, they've read my work somewhere, and would I be interested in being on the editorial board? And they just want your name to be added on. And they do use flattery. So be very careful when you get these emails. And there are so many out there, and it's quite at first flattering, as I said, that you get this email and they want to publish your work or they've read your work, but look at the details, do your background research. So do your background research and get to know the journal that has emailed you and whether it's a legitimate source, whether it's a fake journal or a legitimate source or a credible journal. And that's very important. So the submission process. So once you have your article together, you have your 150-word abstract, you've got your clear, concise title. Your abstract covers the key points and states what's original in it, and that your article is properly proofread and ready to submit. So check the guidelines for that journal. Now, each journal may vary in what their guidelines are. So it could be in terms of how the references are placed. For example, do they use APA referencing or MLA referencing? So check the referencing style. The style guide for each journal will be on their website and follow that when you submit your article. And with the article, the key point of publication is, or the key point that I take away with publication is have patience. It may take 12, 16 weeks to hear back from the editors. So it is a waiting game. And one way, as I said, with the credible and the fake or journals is the waiting time. Often the fake journals or the ones that lack credibility will have a really quick turnaround. And so be a bit skeptical of that. If they say we can get your work published in 4 weeks' time, it may not be that they're a credible journal. Occasionally this can happen with a credible journal that might put out a call for papers or a special issue, but or if you've been contacted because of your work and your area fits in with the journal's themes, but be very skeptical if you get a 4-week turnaround, especially for online journals. Make sure they're affiliated with one of the major publications or publishers. A general wait, as I said, could be up to 16 weeks, and it will give the guidelines for this will be found on the journal webpage. So be patient when it comes to the feedback. So depending on what it says on the website, so if it says 16 weeks turnaround time before you will hear back, wait that time and then contact the editorial assistant or the editor and just follow up, a polite email saying, just following up on my article, is there any feedback? So that's okay to do, but do wait the 12 weeks or 16 weeks. Don't email them after 2 weeks and just find out where your article is. So have a lot of patience. When you get your article back from the authors, from the editors or the editorial board, sometimes you will get feedback very quickly, and that's a desktop editing. So they've looked at your abstract and they will tell you if it's suitable or not suitable for the journal. So in that way, you may get a very quick response. If your article is if your article is accepted for the review process, and if it's a double-blind review process, which is the case for credible journals, it will go to 2 reviewers who do not know who you are. So that is the double-blind review process, and that's a process, as I said, may take up to 16 weeks. So when you do hear back from the editor, the feedback will be either accept with minor revisions, major revisions, revise and resubmit, and reject. So there are generally the 5 categories, and they might slightly differ between journals, but this is the overall. It's very unlikely that you will get accept straight out. That never happens. Generally, it's accept with minor revisions, and that might be grammatical errors or a few key points that might be missing, or major revisions. and major revisions will be substantial revisions. Revise and resubmit is where they think you have a good idea, but it needs a lot of reworking. So that is revise and resubmit. That it's a good idea, but it needs a lot more work. So you have to go through the submission process again. So the major revisions, don't be disappointed with that. And, you know, because it shows that they're interested in it. If you do get major revisions or revise and resubmit, it may go for a second review process. So it will go out to reviewers again, and sometimes it will get rejected. So don't be disappointed that, you know, that if you haven't addressed what the reviewers have commented, it may get rejected again, you know, final rejection. So they're the process of the review feedback. So accept with minor revisions, major revisions, revise and resubmit, and reject. So don't be disappointed with getting a rejection. All academics get rejection letters. So the rate is between 50 to 70% of articles. So it is normal. And being an academic is about being strong. It's about being resilient. So you're used to dealing with it. Don't be discouraged. Read the reviewers' reports. If it's a revise and resubmit or major revisions or accept with minor, read the reviewers' points. Go through slowly. So take some time to respond and make sure, and again, you know, the help of a peer to read it to make sure that you've covered the key points will help. If it's a clear rejection, try another journal. Now, I've used the submission tree, so you could, one tip is aim high and then work your way down. So maybe go to a tier 1 and then work your way down, but you don't need to do that. But just have another, if you're not successful, and most articles aren't, as you can see from the statistics, 50 to 70% of articles, they have been submitted to another journal and then and just revise and then think about another journal. So do again your background research. If you don't get your first choice, try for your second choice or try for your third choice. And sometimes it takes, three goes to get that published. So again, patience with the process. I've experienced that too, where I've submitted an article to a journal. One reviewer liked it, the other reviewer didn't. And then I thought, well, I'll just kind of submit it somewhere else, and then it got accepted with minor revisions. So sometimes it depends on who the reviewer is. So it may be just finding another journal and for publication. So don't be disappointed. Part of being an academic is about being resilient, and don't be discouraged. Read the reviewers' reports and try another journal. So have a backup journal or two backup journals maybe. Now, when you get read the reviewers' reports, it's normal to feel disappointed. So this is absolutely normal. And I always say, wait, once you've glanced at it or kind of summarized it, wait for about 48 hours and then read it again, and it will hopefully make sense. So when you've read it again, then you will see kind of the key points and you're like, oh, okay, this makes sense. This is what needs to be added. And sometimes when you do get your reviewers' reports, you can go back to the editor and you can defend it. If there is a key point that you think the reviewer hasn't got correct or is missing, you can say, well, no, I defend this because my research suggests this. That you provide supporting evidence to defend if you want to. So you don't always have to agree with everything the reviewer has said. But you need to provide justification if you're not going to do that in your revised article. So as I said, rejections are a part of life for an academic. And if a quote, if you are not getting rejected, then you are not aiming for journals of high enough quality. So it's something to make you feel a bit better. With dealing with feedback, don't shoot off an angry email. And that's really common. That's why I say wait 24, 48 hours. You can be angry, that's normal. That's normal part of the process to kind of, when you read comments, but don't send an email to the editor. Highlight the key issues and work with that. So read the reviews report after a day or 2 days, highlight the key issues and kind of work through that. In this graphic, it kind of gives you an idea of what your manuscript will look like after it goes through the review process. So you may start off with a very simple drawing of a car, and that's your article. And after peer review and revision, it will look like something quite different. And this is normal. So don't be too discouraged or don't feel too precious about an article, because the reviewers will provide comments and they will extend and add on extra things that you may not have considered. So with a car with 2 windows, it will have a range of windows. It will look something different. It will transform. So that is just a normal part of manuscript submission. Once your article is published, make sure that it's getting noticed. So, and this also ties in with writing an article. So is it a major breakthrough in the field? Does it impact on society? Is there recommendations for change? Is it timeliness? As you know, now we live in a very uncertain and unfortunate time with the COVID virus. So if your article is about public awareness, community engagement related to the virus, it could be very timely. Is your article of human interest? And these are the kind of things that also make it newsworthy to help get it publicized. So to get your work noticed once it's published, use social media, add it to your email signature, simplify the title into a news headline. So it might help. And often to get your work noticed within universities, you might have a corporate communications that help publish your article to get it a wider audience and into the public sphere. So with research articles, there are different ways of acknowledging recognition. It's through citations, altmetrics, and the journal status. So that's just a little bit of background once you get your journal published, article published. Oops. And yeah, that's my final slide. So thank you. And I'm happy to answer questions. So yes, just turn off my screen sharing. So there we go. Thank you for listening to me.
Thank you, Prof. Really, you have spent your precious time for giving us a wonderful feedback regarding how we can publish our article in international reputable journals. Although as an author, as a researcher, it's quite difficult to follow the comments from the reviewers. Today we have few questions regarding this session, but I wish we can take the question and answer session at the end of the today's session. Dr. Irfan as well also here. And thank you, Prof. Really appreciate your time. And now I would like to request to Dr. Irfan to please come and share your presentation regarding on critical thinking. I want to share that critical thinking is one of the important indicators for writing a manuscript. So it will increase your observation, skills, analysis, how you can write an article in a way. So I think as better, Dr. Irfan, we can be explained more better. Dr. Irfan, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Saud, and hello everyone. I hope that you are well and healthy today. And thanks, Panizza, as well for joining our discussion this afternoon. Yeah, I will share my presentation. Hold on. Okay, is it appear on your screen? Hope so.
Yes, it's fine. Please carry on.
All right. So, oops, I'm at the end of my presentation. Sorry about that. So we'll give, well, a follow-up of what has been previously discussed by Panizza. I would like to emphasize as well into the things that we try to convince ourselves as a writer, as probably as an academic, of how important is it to stay on our track, not being aware of anything else that can ruin your mood, for example, in writing. Because I noticed that it is hard to write something good, but it is harder not to finish the writing itself. So I think when you keep trying to write, I think that's a good way to be more to be more giving your experience into this kind of activities. Basically, I have been involved in several journals as the reviewer, nationally and internationally. I am the reviewer for the Masyarakat Kebudayaan Politik journal at Universitas Airlangga, and also become a reviewer at the Jurnal Ilmu Komunikasi at Universitas Atmajaya, Yogyakarta. And I have also been very happy become the part of the editor at the Continuum Journal of Media and Cultural Studies, the reviewer, I mean. By doing this, I noticed several kind of writing that has their own tone, actually. Now, writing is a personal experience, and I know it is so personal means that when you are being rejected, as what has been explained by Panizza, it would be like feel so hurt inside, right? I've experienced that as well. But in my role as the reviewer, I noticed that there are people that also like putting their own kind of style without even noticing about the rules. And I think this is also important, that when you are writing, you have to follow the rules, because you are aiming at the publication, that it's not aim for kind of certain audience. So by understanding the importance of an effective academic writing, I think it will give us more experiences or knowledge into what we are going to do next, right? The first thing, by doing this kind of academic writing, means that you are doing your analytical thinking. Academic writing kind of forces you to think in an analytical way. You have this set of information and communicate it in a way that makes sense to the reader. Means that you are not writing to yourself. You are writing for the publication, means that your writing will be read by some people, right? And research gives you the information that you need to write. By doing academic writing means that you need to do the research as well. It's not something that based on your own kind of knowledge, but you need to enhance it into different kind of research. It's not always depend on research, but you have to make a good reference on it. After that, it is your responsibility to analyze that information and have your kind of distinct point of view on your findings. When you have the ability to analyze anything, you are having the skills that stays with you forever. So it needs to be practiced a lot. And also, you need to check the structure, the referencing, and the quality of your writing, because it is something that you made a whole day or just in one day, but you made it into several days or maybe weeks or maybe months or maybe years. So you should provide some time to read it again about your writing. Because academic writing is like an assignment, and each task comes with its own instruction. Means that you have to notice about the rules of the publication or maybe the journal that we like to aim. Because by doing this, you will, and read it again and again, you will know about, okay, maybe I missed something, maybe I missed this and that. Because by the time you have sent your manuscript to the publisher or to the journal editor, means that you have your final. It doesn't mean like maybe for undergraduate student, when they're sending the supervisor their work, they just say like, hello sir, this is my second or fourth or fifth revision. Please make amendment to it. So it's not something that the editor can amend it to you, right? You are yours on your own. It means that you are having your final kind of writing. So you need to check and recheck the structure, referencing, and the quality of your work itself. You also have to think that by doing this academic kind of writing, you also need to get your set of skills by researching. Doing intensive research is more than just an internet search. It can take a lot of time to research a topic, but you should show it it is an interesting journey, right? Because when you are interested in one thing, you are willing to do anything. I mean, you are would like to seek for someone's information because you are a fan of that person, just like something like doing that. As you are researching, you are educating yourself on a specific topic, right? And maybe this is the thing that you didn't realize, but you are actually educating yourself. This kind of education will help you to think critically and form an opinion. And the research itself contains important information, and each academic writing piece will require you to have this. By doing this academic writing means that you have your discipline. You have your kind of set of rules for yourself to write. And I think, yeah, I know it's not an easy thing. It's not an easy task, but you need to do this again and again. You need to practice it for yourself. And also writing is the activity of thinking. You are not the typist, you are the thinker, right? You're not only typing, but you're also thinking whether the sentence is correct or not. Is it logical or not? It is about taking your own thoughts and then arranging them into something that logical and makes sense. Is it logical first to yourself and then to your reader, right? It has to make sense. If you're by doing this, something that makes sense means that you know that the structure of your sentence is having a good plot, right? You are pulling these thoughts from your mind and crystallizing it on your paper or on your screen. They are in place where not only you have to see them for what they are, but so can other people. So the value of your writing can be seen by the logical thinking, and writing is thinking itself. It's also about taking your own thoughts and then arranging them become logical and make sense. Yeah, you are pulling these thoughts from your mind and crystallizing it, because writing is thinking, and I think this is very important. By doing the the academic writing means that you have your own professionalism. Yeah, because writing in academic tone teach you how to be professional. Academic writing allows you to feel professional since you have your own standard, and you have to match your standard with the standard from the publication or from the journal. You are learning as well how to be and sound professional. It is good in make life more easier because you have the sets of standards. You don't have to predict in every time you are writing. You have your sets of standard, and that's quite good in making this academic writing. Now, I have talked about educate yourself. Yes, it is very important because it will lead you to discipline, and it leads you to the work ethic itself. By doing the discipline means that you are respecting yourself, you are respecting your kind of writing, and you are respecting your profession as a writer. I mean, when you are lecturer, means that you are not only doing lecture, but you are also writing. In Indonesia, it's not only writing, it's not only lecturing, it's also have to do the social work. It's also have the administration work. It's many things, but by focusing on this kind of particular thing, I think it's also good because you are doing your discipline, you are doing your work ethic in a good way. Learning good work ethic is important and can never be taught to you when you are faced with a topic or when you are facing this kind of bad environment in writing. You need to make yourself accountable for what you are doing. Yes, the challenge is to educate yourself enough to be able to make an objective opinion. Something objective, especially in my field, in social sciences, for example, maybe it's quite debatable, but you have to make your writing become acceptable in these logical senses. And maybe it's the term of the objective opinion itself. This is not just one step, but multiple steps, which takes a lot of time and effort. When you complete the project, it means that you are going to be impressed. You are going to be very proud of yourself. It teaches you that you have to work for that feeling, for accomplishment. Since you are doing this for yourself, you are doing this for your career. So it needs to be very personal in a sense, but it's also need to be professional in how you work with this kind of writing. And you also have to understand your reader. When you write an essay or maybe a publication for a journal, you need to understand who is it for, who will be reading my writing, what they need or want to hear, and how to present the information in the most convincing or approachable manner. You have to get these very interesting facts. You have this information that you probably received from books, internets, magazines, sort of thing. But you have to mixture it in a good way, right? And once again, it's not an instant thing. It needs process. And I believe that Panizza has told us about that. And it's also needs a particular language skills. Language, for example, that maybe in high school, like I remember in high school, I need to choose whether to pick the major, because in Indonesian high school, we have this social or life sciences or bahasa or language. People who choose bahasa will be like, oh, why you choose bahasa? It's so low, something like that. But right now, you will understand by doing this writing, you will need your language skills, right? Academic writing is a synthesis of all other language skills. You need a good grammar. You need an academic vocabulary. You need to get yourself, opening thesaurus, for example, all of the time. You need to be able to make sense and comprehend instruction, and you need to be able to speak up when it comes to question and assert your opinions. And most importantly, you need to read a lot. Right? That's the thing. Well, I have heard this kind of anecdote about the particular kind of copy and paste culture in our writing environment, right? So there's one saying: when you are copy and paste the whole journal or maybe the whole writing from someone, it's called plagiarism. But when you are reading a lot and you just took one by one, yeah, and then put it in a good reference and put it as the way it has to be, then it's research. So it's actually the thing that you need to grow on that. I mean, by doing this kind of culture, you are writing in a good way. You are doing it in an ethical way, and I think that's important. And by writing a lot means that you have improved your language skills, especially in writing. Yeah. And I have this last one. Should remember this. Your writing should be, number one, focused. Yeah, it needs to be focused. It cannot be go all round and about. It should be interesting as well, right? By the first time, the reviewer checking or reading your title, for example, so it needs to be interesting from the title. It also needs to be logical, right? And it's evidence-based, based on your research, based on the things that you need to make your reader convinced about what your findings. And it needs to be convincing, right? From the research, from the evidence, it will convince your reader. It should be written in a clear way, in the most logical way. So let's do it in like this kind of abbreviation, file CC, focused, interesting, logical, evidence-based, and convincing and also clear. So I rest my case here. Thank you very much for your attention. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam. Thank you, Dr. Irfan. Really interesting to know about critical thinking. I heard about critical thinking before, but while reading your presentation, I focused that I should focus on it as well. Thank you for both of our speakers. Now we ask some questions. We have some questions from audiences, like one of the questions to Prof. Panizza. They say that the most common problem in article writing is the language issue, lack of intellectuality written. How to solve the issue since the language services put high amount to be charged? I think they want to ask, like, nowadays proofread is very expensive.
It is very expensive to get your work proofread. What I'd recommend is if you can get a co-author who is a native English speaker or a senior academic and publish with them. So if you have your co-author and that will help it, so you've got two people working on the article to proofread it. So that will help. If you can find it a native English, if it's an English journal, to get a native English speaker academic to co-author with you, and that will help with the getting the grammar and the English corrected. That's one strategy. Sometimes universities will support some of the funding to help the language services. And the journals, as I said, some of the key publishers provide English support or proofreading support. And they're usually a little bit less expensive than going to a private proofreading service. So sometimes also, there are three strategies. Finding an academic maybe within your field that has published, that you respect and has a good publication record. They might be willing to read your work and help proofread it. So that's another alternative.
Yeah, I think that's right. Like the co-authors or your universities, we do have a English department. So the department usually have some teachers, so they usually help students and other colleagues as well. But if we go to elsewhere, e-proofing, Taylor and Francis, they are quite expensive and very high demand. Okay, thank you, Prof. We have another questions. There is a student from Hiroshima University, and she said that she talked about the predatory journals. So there is a website, and that the website name Jeffrey Beal. So she said that there is a accusation on Jeffrey Beal is a predatory journal in USA. Is this what the predatory website where we can check it, or is just like a blog?
I'm not aware of that, but I would, any journal that approaches you, do your background research, just see what their editors. And one way of checking also, if the editors contact you, do they have a university address? Are they coming from Gmail or Hotmail? And that is a sign if it's not coming from and is it generally editors would have a university email address. And that's one way of checking. But a lot of it, I don't know of any kind of websites that will check whether journals are predatory or fake. But do your own research. If you get contacted, have a look at who's published with the journal, who's on the editorial board. Do they have an email? Are they using Gmail or their own email address for the journal? So that's sometimes questionable whether they're authentic or not. And often, I know I've had authors who, because I did see a question about the waiting time, and it might say 12 weeks on the journal webpage, but you're waiting maybe 5 months, 6 months before hearing a response. So you can email the editor or the journal, the editorial assistant, just query to say, I've been submitted on this date and I haven't heard back anything. Can you let me know of any progress? And generally they'll let you know, and they'll say, well, it's been sent to one reviewer, or we're still waiting for review's response. There's not much you can do. I mean, I've had, and this is where the negative experience of an author, and she did come back to me because there was an article and she wasn't patient enough with the process. And then a predatory journal contacted her and she thought, oh, I can get this published in 4 weeks. And she had it published. And then when she looked at it, they didn't send it out for review. So when it was published, it had grammar problems, so especially online, so someone can search and they can see all your mistakes and it's up there. So and she came up to me when I presented at another university, and she came to apologize, and she said, I wish I'd listened to your advice, because now it's up there with my name in my CV and they can find it, and I'm very embarrassed because the article is not properly proofread or corrected, where wait a bit of patience and having those reviewers give you feedback. She could have had a Q1 journal published there if she just waited another 4 weeks, but was a bit, wanted to rush and get it published quickly. But then it's actually bad for her CV for going for a job. So patience is probably something, it is a virtue, and it does take, I know we're under a lot of pressure as academics and researchers to publish, but we need to be careful in where we publish in order for our reputation, because you can publish a lot, but if it's not published in the right journals, it will be negative for your reputation.
Prof, as you said in your discussion, like if you want to send an email to the journal editor, so as an author, is it okay? Can we send an email to editor to respond? Like, for example, we can ask about what is the progress of my article, or maybe we can say, what is the journal publication fee, something like that. So is it okay?
Yeah, that's okay. It's about doing your research. So if it's up on the website, don't email the author. So if it's already on the website, because they'll say, why haven't you actually looked at the website? It's all there. But if you've submitted your article and you've waited the 3 months or whatever time they say on the journal, it is okay to email them and say, I submitted my article 3 months ago. Could you let me know about the progress? So that is okay. If your article has been rejected, you can email the editor, but I wouldn't say, can you please read it again or submit it, because once it's rejected, they're not going to read it again. So it's clear, it's a clear response. So you need to look at, as I said, wait 48 hours, read the comments, and send it to another journal. So it has to be a fresh journal. Once it's rejected, you can't send it back. They're very clear, because that's what the review is. And it's often not the editor, it's the editor is looking at the 2 reviews, and if the reviewers suggest that, they're very unlikely, that the answer is clear.
Dear Prof, there is another question that what is the effective way in communicating with reviewer in order to avoid the rejection from reviewers? Because editor is the one who has to decide, but the comments from reviewers is always important, because sometimes their comments are different, even sometimes do not understandable. So what do you think about it?
Okay, when you get the response, so the reviews, if it's the editor will give you the clear response. If it's major revisions, if it's revise or resubmit, if it's reject. If it's reject, there's nothing much you can do. Don't contact the editor again, apart from saying thank you for looking at it and taking the time, but it's not necessary to contact again. You need to be gracious with the response. if it's major revisions and if the editor said like this is major revisions and you've got the reviewer's reports and there's something you don't understand or it's not clear, you can go back to the editor and just say, I'm not sure what they mean by this point. Can you elaborate, or can you explain what they mean, the reviewer means? Because sometimes, and it does happen that you might have one reviewer saying one thing and the other reviewer saying something different.
Thing.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So yeah, you can go back to the editor and just ask for clarification to be clearer on what needs to be done. And as I said, when you do provide your revisions, you can provide a defense. So if you have two opposing views, one said, use this author for the work and the other one says use the other author, you choose which one, and you can say, I didn't use this one because the second one seemed more significant. So you can defend your responses. I wouldn't do it too much, but if there are certain things that you think, I don't agree with that point of view, or you're going to choose one reviewer's comments over the others. But if it's not clear to you, yeah, it's fine. Once you get your response from the editor, to go back and just ask for a bit more clarification on what needs to be done.
Okay, right. Thank you, Prof, for your time and your response to the questions answer session. I have one question for Dr. Irfan, and they say that what is the most, as a critical thinking or writing a manuscript, what is the most important part of article that should be, the editor usually, as a reviewer, you've been reviewer and guest editor to many journals. So what do you think about it, Dr. Irfan?
Yeah, thanks, Saud. The most important thing, according to me, is the title itself, right? It needs to be interesting. And the first thing that I do when I read an article, a draft article, is the title, and then I will do the skipping and scanning on the article itself. So I will read the short part of the introduction, the research methodology, the findings, and also the conclusion, and maybe a small part on the referencing. Because I will notice that if the writer has read a lot, then I suppose that the references should be much more, like the average, right? So it should be like that. But I think the title itself needs to be very interesting, and it's like, well, some journal maybe would like you to give like the minimum words, like for the title, like minimum 7 or 8 words. But there are some journal as well that didn't mention about that anymore. So I think when it comes to writing process, maybe you should pay more attention to the title, but do not afraid or aware too much on it, because your writing will never be finished, because you are thinking a lot about the title and not doing the writing. But after you finish your writing, then give some time to think about the title, because it will give the first impression to the reviewer itself. Thank you.
Thank you. There is another good question, Dr. Irfan. Someone from State University of Medan. They said that if I submit a paper to a conference, and the conference committee, they promises to publish their paper in a journal, and she say, how can I ensure that the quality of the journal is good or not? So my paper gets into the top tier, because there are also pediatric journal that. So I think she's confused regarding the journal ranking or something. So how to check the journal ranking to avoid the predatory journals?
So yeah, there are conferences that actually offer to get the publication on journals or maybe proceedings. But as you may know and notice, that the journal may take some time. So when it comes too fast, I mean, just like in a 3 months period, then your publication has been published, then you need to worry about it, because like, okay, that's too fast, because you know the process took some time for a journal to be published. Especially for a conference, it needs to be carefully selected, and because based on the paper presented. But from what I see that when you want to check, you better check it because there are many. If you go to Scimagojr, for example, you will have lists, and also you can go to other kind of publication detector. So I think it's, I mean, the thing that you maybe need to aware of is like when you are receiving emails like offering you to publish on their journal, but you never know actually how they get your email from which list. Because when I receive an email offering me something, then I will get curious, right? How can they get my email address? Because I never shared it to them, so it must be from a database that has been shared, or maybe sell to the public, so they can actually reach me through my email. So I think when it comes to like offering you, and then you need to check it very carefully. And when it comes to a competent conference, you need to check it as well, because there are models that they are offering a conference. Then you need to pay some amount of money to be published by a certain journal that they have made it as well. So I think this is a common modus that people now should aware of. And by doing this, and you need to clearly have the list of websites that you trust on checking this kind of predatory kind of journal publication. So that's about it.
Thank you so much. There is also a short question regarding old model and the new model. There's a student from Master in Psychology, and he say, is the old model of knowledge, that of the cumulative knowledge, is being replaced? Like, I think he want to say about the old and new model. Like, as a reviewer or as a guest editor, what is the most high demand of the paper which is should be focused on? Sometimes the new model or new theory or old theory might be. What do you think about it? A little bit.
I think
Prof, if you want to respond.
I think it depends on the journal, because there are some journals, and it'll even be in the title, Journal of New Media or Journal of, of Innovative Ideas or critical, so it depends on the journal. Some journals very much focus on new theories and new models, and some are much more traditional. So this is where doing your background research and understanding what kind of articles have been published with that journal. So it might be just looking through the web pages and having a look at what have they published. Are they publishing old theories from new perspectives or completely new theories? So know the journal, get the background research.
Okay, thank you. Yes, Dr. Irfan, you want to add something?
I agree. So some journal has their kind of description, right? So they are also like being described in the title of the journal itself. So maybe International Journal for Contemporary Social Studies, for example. So they already have this kind of limitation on their journal as well. So I think maybe for more general journal like the sustained journal, like the Journal of Social Sciences, for example, that they may receive that. But you also should mention about this kind of multidisciplinary kind of journal, that they actually accepts different wide of thinking into this multidisciplinary kind of approach. So I think it's also need to be provided as well on this part. Thanks.
Thank you. Prof, I have another question. I hope so. This would be a last question. Usually in the academia, our discussion on the publication is like that. You must have a co-author. He or she must have a high index. And this high index affect the decision of your paper. Like editor will impress. Like, oh, he or she sent me a paper like a theorist. We can say like Emile Durkheim maybe. So he sent a paper, so it will be impressed at. So what is your perception regarding it?
It varies, because generally when I look at, as an editor, when I look at all the submissions, and we get hundreds of submissions, I'm not looking at the authors. I'm looking at the titles of the journal. I'm looking at the abstract, and then I may look at who the author is. If I'm not sure, I will just look who the author is. If it's the key author that, I might kind of think, okay, that might be impressive. But most journals, it's not necessary to have co-authored, but it does help with someone leading in that field. But generally, most reviewer editors, when they're looking at it first, they don't look at the names of who sent the work. So it doesn't matter what name it is. They're looking at the title and the contents. So it's, yeah.
Thank you, Prof. And Dr. Irfan for really interesting discussion regarding publication. And we are really thankful for Ppjpi, the Center for Journal Development and Scientific Publication. Really, they are helping us like a student, like a teacher, like a scholar in Universitas Airlangga. And we are also thankful to the audience for joining today this session. And we are going to close this session now. And at the end, Prof, if you want to add something to conclude this session, and Dr. Irfan, maybe if you add that, you are welcome.
I would like to thank everyone for listening to me today, and I would like to wish you good luck in your publications.
Thank you so much. Dr. Irfan, if you want to add something, please.
Yes, I send my regards to everyone who attend here. Don't be afraid or don't be hesitant to writing, because by doing this, you are educating yourself and put yourself in a good way on achieving your goals. So keep writing and don't be upset as well. Upset is good when your writing has been rejected, but it's a pavement for your success, I think. Yeah. Thank you.
I believe when we receive an email regarding rejection, so it's like a heartbreak, Prof.
I know. Yeah. We all, that's part of being an academic. It's resilience and keep trying. Just keep trying. Yeah.
Exactly. If there are sometimes comments, then we improve it. Anyway, thank you. Would like to say thank you again for very informative and intellectual session on research publication, the top-tier journals. And hopefully these presentations will be beneficial for everybody. And thank you for your attention. Good afternoon and Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Thank you. Thanks, Panizza. See you again.
Thank you. See you. Thank you.